Now that we're going to start with the basic weave, you take one of your bundles and you're going to unwind all the yarn so that you can see both of your ends. Then you need to thread the yarn through your needle, and every needle that I'm going to give to you guys has a pretty wide opening. The eye of the needle is nice and open, so it shouldn't be too hard. If you're struggling, we can always get tape to go through the eye of the needle. What I like to do is I just hold it down and press it with my fingers so it's nice and flat, and I slide it. Once a little bit is through, I can push further and then just pull it all the way through. It may take a little practice. Now make sure that you leave quite a bit extra overlapping. You don't need to tie it or anything, but if you leave it too short, as we're pulling and working, it's going to get shorter and shorter and eventually fall out. So I'd leave it pretty long and just let it overlap. Now what we're going to do to start your piece of string is we're going to make one row going over, under, all the way across, and we're going to leave, I don't know, a thumb length left of our yarn, and we're going to put it back in so it's hidden. So here's my needle. I'm starting at this end. I'm right-handed. This is the easier place to start. I'm going to start by going under, then move the needle over, under, over, under, and over. Then this one's over, so then I know I need to go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, and finally my last one is an under. Now I'm going to hold my yarn over here just to keep it from going too far, and it is really long once you unwind your bundle, but remember we want it long so that we don't ever run out. It's nice to have too much. You can always cut it shorter, but if it's too short, then you have to cut more and add it. It'll be more complicated. So now that I'm at the end, I want to come and loop this piece. I'm going to almost weave the edge of it back in here, and then when I do the row coming back with the needle coming back, it'll hide this end. It's okay if a little bit of it shows on the back. You can always trim it later, but especially since we're just starting. So I'm going to make it just a thumb's length, so right about there for me. And now I was under. You can see the red is on top, so I want the yellow to go over it, under, over, under. Once you've gone about 4 strings, you can do more, but at least 4 strings to hold it in. And I'm just going to go till mine it stops. It's the easiest way to do it. Now I want to push these together. I want to, almost like I'm beading. Not quite there yet, but that would be if I were beading. Now it's kind of tucked and nestled in there. It's a bit tight. You don't have to go all the way to the very edge of this. You can leave a little extra room, but we do want it pretty straight. Now the end is in there and I have all this yarn attached. So now I want to go back the other way. This last piece, the red, is on top. So instead of going under, like I did the first time, I need to go over it and under the next one. Over, under, over, under. Oh, really quick. Because the end is over here, this is where I'm going to start with my needle. I don't come back over this way. Then the string wouldn't be hooked on, it wouldn't be woven. So now, that's why we start over here. And again, the red is on top, so I go over, then under, over, under, over, under. Can pull it through a bit, keep going. So now I'm under this one. So I need to go over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and it ends with an over. For your first couple rows until it's really steady, I would recommend just kind of holding it or letting it slide in one place. And this is when you need to be careful not to pull it too tight. So right now it's right at the edge, so I can just beat it up closer, which is pushing those strings. And look, you can barely even see that maybe the end is hidden here. It'll look a little thicker, but it's going to cover our tracks really nicely, and everyone, they won't be able to figure out how you did it. And your plain weave, you just keep going like this. So again, my end is over here. So now I ended with an over, right? The yellow is over the red string, so I need to go under, and I go all the way across again. I'm going to stop saying it, but if you'd like to practice with me, you of course are welcome to. When you first start, I would recommend saying it a lot. It'll help you just get that repetition. It can be really soothing to do weaving because it's going to be a lot of repetition and really smooth, soft things happening over and over again. Now I'm at the end, so I pull it. I'm going to hold it a bit. Now I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to check in with you in a little bit. If you're concerned about these getting covered more, remember that's when you can keep this looser. So I would be pulling a little more of this thread through. Not too much, because if it's too much, you're going to have these big loops hanging off, and you don't want that either. But you should be able to cover it pretty well once you have enough rows. I'm going to go ahead and keep working and check back in with you once I have many, many more, so you can see the basic weave. Alright, so I've gone back and forth and made about 10 rows. And as you can see, I've done the beading, I've pushed it up. If you're having trouble, you can always use your fork. I find my fingers to be just fine. And you can see that my warp is starting to get covered with nice even rows. I wanted to show you some of the ends. This area is where I've been pulling it just tight enough that I'm not pulling the warp back and forth. It's not too tight because it sits nice and straight. But here is a loop where I left it too loose. And you see how, because it's too loose, it is too far out. And also I can now see all that red underneath. It might happen, but I'd like you to start practicing on making a nice even edge. It'll take some work, and don't worry if it's like this where it's many, many rows behind. But if, say, it were this end, we can always go and pull through or pull out this row a little bit and pull it a little tighter or make it a little looser if that's what you're struggling with. Call me over if you can't work it out on your own, but I'd like you to try. Now that I've made this nice, solid, plain weave, if you want to know how to make stripes going horizontally, all you would do is finish off this end by, remember, just going about 4 strings, maybe a little more, across. You'd finish it off, pull through, and then you would trim it. So here it is. I've got to make it a bit tight. And I would trim it. And then I would start a new color over here and make another 10 rows with that color, and it'll start to look like a stripe of yellow, a stripe of, let's say, blue, and then I could come back with this yellow, make a stripe of yellow, and that's how you get plain horizontal stripes. It's just your plain weave. So keep that in mind when it's your time to just make whatever kind of row you'd like or whatever kind of pattern or style to your weaving. For now, make as much of this as you can. Practice the even edges. You don't want to pull them too tight. And practice getting it to beat down the yarn so that you can't see much of the warp. In the areas where you hid the edge, it'll be a little harder to cover up because it's double the thickness, but that's okay. This is where I'll be looking.